Ethan Rowe was the kind of CEO people read about in business magazines, confident, sharply dressed, and known for making bold moves that doubled profits. From the outside, it looked like he had it all figured out. But lately, something gnawed at him. Numbers on paper looked perfect, yet he couldn't ignore the flood of anonymous complaints coming through our. Employees said they felt invisible, overworked, and unheard. Ethan hated the thought that his company, his pride, was thriving at the expense of the very people who kept it alive. He tried asking his managers for answers, but their responses were rehearsed. "Everything's under control, sir. Our team is motivated. The complaints are exaggerated." The polished replies felt too neat, too careful, as if the truth had been scrubbed clean before reaching his desk. That's when Ethan decided to do something radical. If no one would tell him what was happening on the ground, he would find out for himself. For weeks, he studied store routines, practiced stocking shelves, even learned how to log into the cashier system. Finally, on a cool Monday morning, he left behind his tailored suit, knotted tie, and leather briefcase. In their place, he wore a simple navy polo, khaki pants, and a name badge that read, Tom. Walking into the bustling store, Ethan felt oddly nervous. The steady hum of beeping registers, the squeak of shopping carts, and the chatter of customers felt almost foreign. He was no longer the man at the top, he was just another worker blending into the flow. A stock manager handed him a broom and pointed toward a spill in aisle 3. For the first time in years, Ethan's day began not with a board meeting, but with mopping the floor. And yet, beneath his nerves, there was excitement. For once, no one saw a CEO. No one was careful with their words around him. He was invisible in the best way possible. If there were cracks in the system, he was finally in the right place to see them for himself. By early afternoon, Ethan had begun to settle into his undercover role. He'd stocked shelves, bagged groceries for customers, and even learned how to use the clunky handheld scanner that employees jokingly called the dinosaur. His back ached in ways his office chair had never allowed, but he welcomed the discomfort. It made him feel present, grounded. That's when he noticed her. At register 4 stood a young woman, no more than her mid-20s, with tired eyes that still carried a gentle warmth. Her name tag read, Sophia. Despite the steady stream of impatient customers, she greeted each one with a soft, hello, a smile, and a tone that carried a surprising kindness. Even when a man snapped at her for bagging canned goods too close to his bread, she apologized calmly and kept moving. Ethan began to watch her more closely. Unlike the others, Sophia didn't glance toward the clock, didn't sigh at long lines, didn't complain under her breath. But there was something different, something restrained, about her. When the lunch bell rang, signaling the first wave of breaks, the other cashiers handed off their stations quickly, heading for the staff room with sandwiches and sodas in hand. Yet Sophia stayed rooted at her register. She didn't call for a replacement. She didn't even look toward the break room. She simply kept scanning, one item after another, as though the idea of leaving wasn't an option. Curiosity got the better of Ethan. During a lull, he approached her under the guise of helping bag groceries. Not taking a break, he asked casually, sliding a carton of milk into a bag. She gave him a small, tired smile. I'll be fine. Someone else probably needs it more. Her words were polite, almost rehearsed, as though she'd had to deflect questions like this before. Later, when the line finally slowed and Sophia stepped away for a brief pause, Ethan caught sight of her at the lockers. She opened a worn canvas bag and pulled out a small cooler pouch. He expected to see a sandwich, maybe a thermos of soup. Instead, she carefully took out a tiny jar of baby food and a bottle wrapped in a dish towel. Ethan stopped in his tracks. She wasn't skipping her meal to work faster, she was skipping it so she could feed her baby. The break room was nothing glamorous, just 4 metal tables, a vending machine with half-lit buttons, and a bulletin board cluttered with outdated safety posters. Fluorescent lights flickered faintly overhead, casting a tired glow on the gray walls. Employees usually used the space to eat quickly, scroll through their phones, or trade light-hearted complaints about shifts. But when Sophia entered, she brought with her a kind of quiet that hushed the usual chatter. Ethan, pretending to grab a drink from the vending machine, watched as she settled into a corner seat. She placed her worn canvas bag beside her, then lifted her baby into her lap with careful tenderness. The child was smaller than Ethan had imagined, maybe 8 months old, with chubby cheeks and a pink ribbon in her fine hair. The baby reached out eagerly, cooing as Sophia unscrewed the lid of a tiny jar of mashed carrots. Instead of opening a sandwich or unwrapping something for herself, Sophia focused only on her daughter. Spoonful by spoonful, she fed her, whispering soothing words in Spanish under her breath. Every few bites, Sophia would smile faintly, though her own lips looked pale. The only thing she allowed herself was a sip from a plastic water bottle. A coworker passing by paused, eyebrows furrowed. "Sophia, you didn't bring anything for yourself again?" the woman asked gently. Sophia shook her head, bouncing her baby slightly to keep her calm. "It's okay. Every dollar counts. Formula is expensive, diapers too. I'd rather go without than cut her short." Her voice carried no bitterness, only matter-of-fact resolve. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He'd sat through countless strategy meetings about cost reduction and profit optimization, but never had those terms felt so shameful. Here was a cashier, one of his thousands of employees, rationing her own needs so that her child wouldn't feel the weight of poverty. As he stood frozen, he realized something even more painful. No one in management had noticed. No one had stepped in to ease her burden. Sophia had become invisible in the very system he had built. The baby let out a happy squeal, smearing carrot puree across her cheek. Sophia laughed softly, wiping it away with the edge of her sleeve. That sound, the laugh of a mother who found joy in the middle of sacrifice, echoed in Ethan's ears long after he left the break room. That evening, back in his temporary apartment, he sat in silence with his untouched takeout. For the first time in years, food on his plate didn't feel like a meal, it felt like a privilege. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the store with a heavy mind. The image of Sophia feeding her baby instead of herself clung to him like a shadow. He'd spent half the night replaying it, wondering how many other employees quietly lived the same story, unseen and unheard. That day, he made sure to linger near her register more often, offering to bag groceries, restock receipt paper, or simply help corral carts from the front. The more time he spent beside her, the clearer it became. Sophia carried an invisible weight that didn't slow her hands, but lived in her eyes. During a lull in the afternoon rush, Ethan seized his chance. He leaned against the counter casually, as though making small talk. "So," he asked, "how do you manage all this? Work, the baby, everything?" Sophia hesitated, her fingers smoothing the edge of the conveyor belt. She gave him a polite shrug at first, as if brushing off the question. But something about his tone must have sounded genuine, because after a moment she sighed, lowering her voice. "I manage because I have to," she said quietly. "Rent's due every month, the lights don't pay for themselves, and daycare," she trailed off, shaking her head. "It's more than I can afford. So I bring her here when I can, or I swap shifts with friends. Some days it works, some days it doesn't." Ethan felt a lump forming in his throat. "That sounds exhausting," he said carefully. Sophia chuckled softly, though it was humorless. "Exhausting is one word for it. But she's worth it." She glanced toward the break room, where her daughter slept in a second-hand stroller. Her expression softened immediately, as though the mere sight of her baby erased the fatigue in her bones. Gathering courage, Ethan asked, "Do you ever get time for yourself? To rest? To dream about what you'd want, outside of all this?" Her answer was almost a whisper. "Sometimes I think about nursing school. My mom was a nurse back home. But that's just a dream. Right now, I can't even afford to take a full lunch break." Those words struck Ethan harder than any shareholder critique ever had. He'd built this company to be family-oriented, priding himself on efficiency and customer satisfaction. Yet here was one of his own employees, bright, dedicated, full of potential, feeling like her life's dreams were impossible because the system gave her no room to breathe. Sophia gave a tired smile, mistaking his silence for pity. "It's fine. I don't expect anyone at the top to notice people like me anyway. We just keep our heads down and get through it." Ethan swallowed hard, forcing himself to maintain his undercover role. She had no idea she was speaking those words directly to the man at the top. Inside, guilt and determination wrestled for space in his chest. He wanted to tell her right then, to promise her change, but he couldn't, not yet. Not until he figured out how to make his words mean something. That night, as he lay awake staring at the ceiling, Her voice echoed in his mind, "I don't expect anyone at the top to notice people like me." For the first time in years, Ethan felt ashamed of the title CEO. By the end of the week, Ethan knew he couldn't keep the disguise much longer. Every night he returned to his apartment, writing down what he had seen: missed breaks, understaffed shifts, workers stretching themselves thin to cover hours no one else would take. But it was Sophia's quiet sacrifice that anchored every note. She had become the face of what his company had overlooked. On Friday afternoon, the store manager gathered the staff in the break room, saying corporate wanted to check in. Employees shuffled in reluctantly, expecting another routine pep talk about productivity. Sophia sat near the back, rocking her baby in the stroller, looking more tired than usual. Ethan stood near the doorway, heart pounding in his chest. He hadn't felt this nervous since pitching his very first investor. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, tugged the cap from his head, and removed the badge that read, "Tom." "My name isn't Tom," he began, voice carrying over the hum of vending machines. "I'm Ethan Rowe. I'm your CEO." The room went silent. Forks froze halfway to mouths. A few employees exchanged stunned glances, while others blinked in disbelief. Sophia straightened in her chair, confusion flickering across her face. "I came here undercover," Ethan continued, his voice steadier now. "I wanted to see what life is like for the people who keep this company alive. And what I found," he paused, eyes sweeping. "What I found broke me." He turned directly to Sophia. "I saw you give up your own lunch so your baby could eat. I saw you work through exhaustion with a smile for every customer. That kind of dedication should never go unnoticed." Sophia's lips parted slightly, her cheeks flushing as all eyes turned toward her. I was just doing what I had to," she murmured. "No," Ethan said firmly. "You were doing more than that. You were sacrificing yourself in silence, and no one should have to do that. Not in my company." He reached into a folder he'd been carrying and held out 2 envelopes. The first was a promotion letter, an immediate raise in a supervisory role that came with flexible scheduling. The second was a scholarship grant for nursing school, enough to cover tuition and supplies. For a moment, Sophia just stared at the envelopes, too stunned to move. Her hand trembled as she reached for them. This can't be real," she whispered, eyes welling with tears. "It's real," Ethan said softly. "Because you are the kind of person who deserves to be seen and supported, not overlooked." The break room erupted into applause. Some employees clapped, others wiped their eyes. A few muttered words like, "finally," and, "about time." Sophia covered her face with her hand, crying openly now, while her baby stirred gently in the stroller beside her. Ethan stood taller, but his voice cracked with emotion. "This isn't just about Sophia. It's about all of you. If my company has made you feel invisible, then I've failed as a leader. That ends now." And in that small, fluorescent-lit room, a promise was made, not just to one mother, but to every employee who had ever felt unseen. The news of Ethan's reveal didn't stay in that break room for long. Within days, the story spread through every aisle, checkout lane, and stockroom in the company's hundreds of stores. Employees who once felt invisible suddenly had a reason to believe someone at the top cared enough to notice them. But Ethan knew words alone weren't enough. Promises had to turn into action. He moved quickly. Within a month, new policies rolled out: guaranteed paid meal breaks for every worker, higher starting wages, and flexible scheduling for parents. He launched a childcare assistance program that helped cover daycare costs, and for stores in underserved areas, partnerships with local nurseries provided discounted spaces for employees' children. Managers were retrained, not just in efficiency, but in empathy, learning how to lead without overlooking the human lives behind the uniforms. The changes didn't just improve morale. Customer satisfaction soared too. Shoppers noticed their cashiers smiling more, stock clerks whistling while they worked, employees greeting regulars by name with genuine warmth. A culture that had once run on silent sacrifice now pulsed with dignity. And at the heart of it all was Sophia. She adjusted to her new supervisory role with quiet confidence, learning how to manage schedules and guide new hires with the same patience she had once used at her register. On weekends, she attended nursing classes, funded by the scholarship Ethan had handed her in that break room. For the first time in years, her dreams no longer felt out of reach. Her daughter thrived too. The baby who had once been fed in hushed corners of the break room now toddled through a brighter future, secure, cared for, and with a mother who no longer had to choose between her own hunger and her child's. The employees began to call Sophia a symbol of courage. At quarterly meetings, she sometimes shared her story, her voice trembling at first, then strengthening as she spoke. Each time, Ethan listened with quiet pride, remembering the day he first saw her in that uniform, tired eyes, but an unshakable spirit. For Ethan, the lesson remained etched into his heart. Success wasn't measured in profit margins or expansion charts. It was measured in lives touched, in sacrifices lifted, in dreams restored. And so, the company changed. Not because of a new strategy or a clever campaign, but because one undercover CEO had paused long enough to notice a single mother, skipping her own lunch so her baby would never go without. From that moment on, he vowed never to let anyone in his company feel unseen again.